The day the CEO's son fired me, I wore the wrong shoes. That's what I remember first. Not the words, not his face, not the way the room went quiet when he realized I wasn't going to beg. Just the shoes. Black flats I kept meaning to replace. The soles were a little worn, the leather scuffed at the corners, and as I walked down the glossy hallway toward his office, I could hear them squeak on the marble with every step. I'd only been in the building a few hours. First day, new badge, new login, new title, Chief Operations Officer, COO of a company people in my industry had heard whispered about for years. A family-owned logistics empire that had grown too fast, burned too hot, and now sat on the edge of a cliff, waiting for someone to pull it back or push it over. They brought me in to pull. Turn it around, the board had said. We're bleeding money, warehouses half full, contracts leaking, morale in the basement. We need someone who isn't afraid to make cuts and call out the problems. They wanted a fixer. The founder, Charles, had sat across from me during the final interview, hands folded, eyes tired. We've indulged my son too much, he'd admitted quietly. He needs structure. The company needs discipline. You give me results, I'll give you the authority to do what's needed. He didn't say anything about shares that day. That conversation came later. But standing there on that first morning, with my cheap shoes squeaking and my heart pounding against my ribs, all I knew was this: I had a chance to rewrite my life. And 10 minutes later, his son tried to erase me with one sentence. Close the door, Ethan said, without looking up. He was behind his father's desk, feet on the polished wood, scrolling through his phone with the kind of careless relaxation that only belongs to people who've never worried about rent. He didn't stand, didn't offer a hand, didn't smile, just flicked his eyes up from the screen, gave me one long, dismissive once-over, and went back to scrolling. I shut the door. Sit, he said. I sat. He let the silence stretch. Power move, testing me. I'd seen this act before in other companies, a man playing CEO rather than being one. The expensive suit, the perfect hair, the posture of someone who's been told his whole life the world belongs to him. What is the most hilarious power play you have experienced at work? Let's have a good laugh in the comments section. When he finally put the phone down, he laced his fingers behind his head and leaned back. So, he said, you're the miracle worker. I kept my voice steady. I'm the new COO, yes. I appreciate the opportunity. I've already reviewed the last 4 quarters, and I have some ideas on... He waved a hand like swatting a fly. Yeah, we'll get to that, eventually. He stared at me for a moment, head tilted. How old are you? He asked. 36. Huh, he smirked. You look younger. People might not take you seriously, just a thought. I ignored the jab. I take the work seriously, I said. That tends to help. His smirk faded. You know what helps more? He asked. Understanding how things work around here. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. See, this company isn't some corporate free-for-all, he said. It's family. My family. My father's name is on the building. My grandfather's. The only reason you're sitting here is because the board got spooked by a few red numbers and decided to bring in an outsider. He said outsider like a dirty word. I didn't flinch. I'm here because I'm good at fixing things, I said. Your father hired me. The board approved the role. We all want the same thing for this company to survive. He chuckled. Cute. Then he pointed at my badge. Take that off, he said. I blinked. What? Your badge, he repeated. Take it off and leave it on the desk. I stared at him. Is this some kind of joke? I asked. He raised an eyebrow. Do I look like I'm joking? I waited for the punchline that never came. Effective immediately, he said. You're terminated. The words fell like a gavel. You can't fire me, I said carefully. I report to the board and your father, not you. My contract was signed under my father's authority, he cut in. And as of 9 this morning, I'm acting CEO. He's on medical leave. That means I have full control over executive staff. He slid a folder across the desk. On top was a document with the company letterhead. Temporary medical leave. CEO Charles Hargrove. Acting CEO appointment. Ethan Hargrove. The signatures at the bottom were real. My stomach dropped. That explained the whispered phone call I'd seen Charles take at my welcome breakfast. The way his hand had trembled slightly wrapping around his mug. The sudden paleness. I'd assumed it was stress. Maybe it was more. I'm sorry to hear about your father, I said quietly. But that doesn't explain why you're terminating me on the first day. He shrugged. I don't like you, he said simply. And I don't like what you represent. And what's that? He smiled, all teeth. An outsider who thinks she can walk into my company and tell me what to do. It wasn't just about business. It was about ego, control, territory. Your father asked for help, I said. The board agreed this company, he said sharply, has been in my family for 3 generations. I don't need some nobody with a turnaround resume and discount shoes coming in and fixing what you don't understand. It was a cheap shot, the shoes. But the way he said nobody hit harder, because he meant it. To him, I wasn't a seasoned operator. I wasn't the woman who'd saved 2 other companies from collapse. I wasn't the person the board had been quietly courting for 6 months. I was a replaceable problem, a piece to move off the board. I've seen your type before, he went on. Come in, slash costs, fire people who have been here 20 years, and then leave with a nice bonus while the rest of us deal with the mess. That's not happening here. I held his gaze. You read my report? I asked. Nope, he said. Looked at my plan? Didn't need to. Spoken to any of your warehouse managers, your drivers, your sales staff? He smirked. That's your mistake, he said. You think this is about operations. It's not. This is about power. He picked up my badge, twirled it on the lanyard. My name is on the paperwork now, he said. So consider this your only warning. Leave quietly. Don't stir things up. We'll pay out your contract. You can put consultant on your resume. Everyone wins. Everyone. He meant him, because a quiet exit meant no questions, no scrutiny. No one looking too closely at the numbers I'd already flagged in my notes. Vendor payments to a shell company, marketing spend with no invoices, a mysterious consulting fee that matched the price of a sports car. I'm not signing anything today, I said. His expression shifted. The room cooled. I wasn't asking, he said. You're acting CEO, I said, not God. My contract has a clause requiring board approval for termination. You might want to read it before you try to throw me out. He picked up a pen and tapped it against the desk. You think the board's going to protect you? He asked. Half of them have been trying to get my father to retire for 5 years. They'll do whatever I say if the numbers look good. If the numbers are real, I said quietly. He paused, just for a second, but I saw it. A flicker. Annoyance? No, fear. Get out of my office, he said. I stood. As I reached for the door, he spoke again. Oh, and one more thing, he added. If you even think about going behind my back to my father while he's recovering, I'll make sure you never work at this level again. You're not as untouchable as you think, sweetheart. Sweetheart. The word hung in the air like something rotten. I turned slowly. Neither are you, I said. Our eyes met. We both smiled. But only one of us meant it. Because he thought he'd just executed a perfect power move, humiliating me, asserting dominance, sending a message to anyone else thinking about challenging him. What he didn't know, what he couldn't possibly know, was that this wasn't my first day at this company. Not really. This was my first day with a title, but I'd been in their books for months, in their warehouses, at their loading docks, in their boardrooms, in their numbers, first as an outside consultant with no name tag, then as a third-party auditor nobody paid much attention to, then as the woman Charles Hargrove trusted enough to give access most employees never saw. Because when the board gets scared, they don't just hire you, they test you, quietly, thoroughly, and 3 months before that morning, in a small glass office with no one else around, Charles had slid a different folder across a different desk and changed everything. Before you see this, he'd said, you need to understand something. This company is dying, not because of the market, not because of the economy, because of bad leadership. Some of that is on me. He'd taken off his glasses, rubbed his eyes. My son has been reckless, he admitted. He's liquidated assets without approval, pushed loyal employees into selling their shares back during downturns, used company accounts like a personal wallet. If I don't do something now, there won't be anything left. He'd opened the folder. Inside were stock certificates, a lot of them. My stake was diluted years ago when we brought in private investors, he'd said. I own 30% personally. The rest is scattered. Old executives, early employees, friends of the family. They don't know it yet, but this company is dead if we leave it as is. He looked up at me. I want you to save it, he said. And to do that, you need more than a job. I'd frowned. What are you saying? He'd pushed the folder closer. You've already impressed the board, he said. They know we need you. But I don't want you to be another hired gun who leaves in 2 years. I want you invested, literally. He had proposed something insane, a buyback restructuring. He and I, working together, would approach the scattered shareholders, those old executives, retired board members, early employees who'd moved on, and offer them a fair buyout while the stock was still considered troubled. Not pennies, not pressure, a clean exit for them. In exchange, we would consolidate control, not under him alone, under both of us. He'd drawn it out on paper. Between my 30%, he'd said, and what we can quietly acquire through the authorized buyback program with board approval, we can get you to a majority position, 51% minimum, maybe more. The rest of the board will still have their stakes. My son will still have his. But you, he tapped the paper where my hypothetical percentage was written. You will have the power to do what needs to be done when I can't. I'd stared at the numbers. This is a lot of trust, I'd said. It's not trust, he'd replied. It's survival. Over the next few months, we'd done exactly that. We approached people who'd been watching the company spiral downward and were ready to cash out before it went under. We made fair offers, put everything through legal channels, used the buyback structure the board had already authorized in a vague restructuring vote. They signed, one by one. Every time a certificate changed hands, my stake grew. 43%, 51%, 64%. By the time the ink dried on the last agreement, the number written under my name on the internal cap table read 72%, 72. More than the founder. More than the board combined. More than Ethan could ever hope to claw back without my consent. But we hadn't told him. Not yet. That information stays between us and the board until you're officially in the role, Charles had said. No sense lighting a fuse before you're ready to hold the extinguisher. So when Ethan fired me on day one, he thought he was pushing out some overpaid outsider with a fancy title. He was firing the woman who owned the company he thought he was inheriting. And in that moment, standing in his office, with my badge still around my neck and his threats still ringing in the air, I realized something. I could correct him, right then. I could pull out the documents, call the board chair, end the performance. But that would only stop the scene. It wouldn't reveal the actor. Because the more he thought he had control, the more mistakes he would make. And I had already seen enough strange entries in the books, phantom vendors, inflated invoices, forced voluntary share sales, to know that whatever he was doing, he wasn't done. He was just getting started. So I did the one thing he didn't expect. I unhooked my badge, set it gently on his desk, smiled. "Thank you for the clarity," I said. "I'll get my things." He smirked. Smart choice. I turned and walked out, my cheap shoes squeaking on the pristine floor, past assistants who looked up with wide eyes and junior managers who pretended not to stare. In the elevator, I caught my reflection. I didn't look fired. I looked awake. By the time I reached the ground floor, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number, board chair. Need to speak. Urgent. I stepped out onto the sidewalk, sunlight hitting my face, and felt something settle inside me. This wasn't a story about me losing a job. This was a story about a man who thought titles mattered more than ownership, about a boy playing CEO with other people's lives and money, about a company on the edge of collapse and a board that had finally run out of patience. He had fired me on my first day. He had no idea I was going to fire him from his entire life. And the way it was going to happen would be darker, colder, and far more public than anything he'd ever done to me. Because when you try to humiliate someone who quietly owns 72% of your world, you don't just lose. You lose grandly. You lose everything. And I was going to make sure he felt every second of it, from the first audit to the last board vote. When I stepped outside the building, the air felt heavier than it had when I walked in that morning. Not colder, heavier, like the air before a storm, when the clouds are too full and you know something is going to break. I checked the message again. Board chair, need to speak, urgent. It didn't surprise me. Firing a C-suite officer without board consultation wasn't just unprofessional. It was illegal according to the company bylaws, and Ethan had done it with the confidence of someone who never once bothered to read policy. I called the number back, and the board chair, Marion Lawson, picked up immediately. "Where are you?" she asked, skipping any greeting. "Just outside the building," I said. "Ethan fired me." There was a long beat of silence on the line. "Of course he did," she said finally, her voice flat. "He's spiraling. Charles' health took a dip 3 days ago, and Ethan has convinced himself that means he's suddenly king. Come to the board lounge. 10 minutes. She hung up. No explanations, no reassurance. Just the tone of a woman who had seen one too many men let arrogance get them fired. The board lounge was in a separate building connected by an indoor walkway. More private, more secure, more insulated from the day-to-day chaos. When I arrived, Marion was already there, arms crossed, face set in the expression of someone who hasn't slept in days. "Sit," she said. "Tell me everything." I told her. Every detail, every insult, every smirk. Every time he called me outsider and sweetheart, the way he dropped his father's name like a weapon, the way he gloated. When I finished, she exhaled slowly. 72%, she said under her breath. He fired the majority owner of the company. Her tone wasn't angry. It was amused, in a dark, exhausted way. Look, she said, leaning back in her chair. Charles trusted you, enough to offer you those shares, enough to put you on the path to taking this company back from the brink. But he didn't tell Ethan, and neither did we. That entire side of the family has treated ownership like a birthright for so long, they never thought to check the updated capitalization table. So he still thinks he owns the company, I said. He owns 18%, she said. The board owns the remaining 10 among us. The rest is you. Why does he think he can get away with firing me? Because he's been doing whatever he wants for 2 years, she said, and nobody stopped him. Those 2 years included every irregular entry I'd flagged, every missing asset, every forced buyout, every fake justification for pulling money out of the company accounts. There was a reason the board needed me. They couldn't prove wrongdoing without blowing up the stock price. Ethan firing me without cause wasn't just wrong. It was useful. This is going to get ugly, Marion said, but it's going to be fast. The board has already been considering an emergency vote to strip him of authority. Now we have grounds. What do you need from me? I asked. She opened a folder and pushed it toward me. Everything, she said. Your research, your audit notes, every number you flagged, every ledger entry you questioned, every discrepancy you found. I looked down at the papers. This is enough to open a forensic audit, I whispered. Exactly, she said. And once we open one, everything he tried to hide comes out. There was a knock at the door. A security officer stepped inside. Ms. Lawson, he said, we have a situation. We both stood. What kind of situation? Marion asked. It's the Hargrove boy, the guard said. He's on the executive floor screaming. Something about an employee disrespecting him and threatening legal action. Says he's going to shut the board down. Security is requesting guidance. She closed her eyes briefly. He's losing control, she said. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Let him yell, Marion said. That's not our problem anymore. She turned back to me. We're holding an emergency board meeting in 1 hour, she said. You will attend. You will present what you found. And once we handle the vote, we'll bring in the auditors. Today marks the beginning of the end for him. I nodded. And after the vote? I asked. She smiled, a small, sharp, tired smile. You'll take your seat at the head of the table. The boardroom was enormous, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the entire city. I'd only been in that room once before, when Charles offered me the role. It had felt overwhelming then. This time, it felt like purpose. The door opened, and the board members filed in one by one. Some looked anxious, some looked furious, some looked relieved, like they had been waiting for this day. Everyone took their seats, everyone except Ethan. He wasn't invited. Marion tapped her pen against the table. Let's begin, she said. You all know why we're here. A murmur of agreement. She nodded to me. Tell them, she said. I stood. The weight of the room pressed in, but my voice stayed steady. This company is hemorrhaging money, I began, and not because of market conditions, not because of competitors, because of internal mismanagement, unauthorized transactions, and deliberate actions taken to hide those decisions. I laid out everything, the vendor payments to non-existent companies, the inflated invoices, the forced buyouts that had targeted older shareholders, the missing equipment, the disappearing funds, the consulting fees to shell corporations, the fake audits signed by people who didn't exist. I laid out dates, amounts, and accounts. I showed them what I had found, what Ethan had done, and as I spoke, the board grew silent in the way that only happens when shock and anger blend together. When I finished, Marion stood. "We've suspected some of this for months," she said, "but we couldn't act without evidence. Now we have it." She looked around the room. Motion to remove acting CEO Ethan Hargrove from all operating authority effective immediately. Seconded. Third. All in favor. 11 hands went up, unanimous. Marion nodded. "It's done." And then, as if summoned by the vote, the boardroom doors slammed open. Ethan stormed in, red-faced, breathless, flanked by 2 security guards trying to calm him. "What the hell is going on?" he shouted. "You can't make decisions without me. I'm the CEO." "No," Marion said calmly. "You're not." He froze. "What the hell does that mean?" he demanded. I stepped forward. "It means," I said, "you fired the wrong person." He stared at me, confused. "You don't even work here," he spat. "You're nobody." I met his eyes. "No," I said softly. "I'm 72%. The confusion on his face shifted into disbelief, then horror, then fury. "What? That's impossible. My father, he would never—" "Your father gave those shares to someone he trusted," Marion said. "Someone who could save the company you were killing. He had no right." "He had every right," she said, "and the board ratified it." Ethan looked at me again, his expression wild. "You set me up," he whispered. "This was a trap." "No," I said. "A trap is when someone lures you somewhere you shouldn't be. You walked yourself into this. All I did was flip the lights on." He lunged forward, but the security guards restrained him. "You can't do this," he yelled. "This is my company." "It was," Marion said, past tense. "And effective immediately," I added. "You are relieved of all duties pending a full forensic audit." His face drained. What?" he whispered. "A forensic audit," I repeated. "Every transaction, every invoice, every signature, every disappearance, everything you thought no one would ever find." He looked at the board, desperation creeping into his voice. "You can't do this. I'm family. I'm Hargrove." One of the senior board members, the one who had been silent the entire time, finally spoke. "That name used to mean something," he said. "Now it's a liability." The guards pulled Ethan back. He yelled the whole way out. Curses, threats, promises of lawyers, promises of revenge, but none of it mattered. Because the moment the doors closed behind him, the boardroom fell silent, peaceful almost. Marion turned to me. "You ready?" she asked. "For what?" "To fix what he broke," she said. "We're appointing you as CEO." I took a slow breath. "I'm ready." "Good," she said, "because this isn't just a recovery mission." She leaned closer. "This is going to get darker." I nodded. "Then let's begin." Because firing him wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The audit would expose everything. The lawsuits would follow. The assets he'd stolen under fake LLCs would be traced. His personal accounts would be frozen. His father would learn the truth. And the man who fired me on my first day was about to watch his entire world collapse from the outside. When the board meeting ended and Ethan had been dragged out like a malfunctioning toddler at Disneyland, the room slowly emptied. Papers shuffled, chairs scraped quietly, and people whispered to one another, with the hushed excitement of employees who finally witnessed the office tyrant get what he deserved. I stayed behind with Marion to look over the audit preparation documents. She was talking through next steps when there was a faint tapping sound on the boardroom window. At first I ignored it. Tap, tap, tap. Marion frowned. "What is that?" Tap, tap, tap. We both turned toward the glass wall, and there he was, Ethan, pressed up against the glass like a raccoon trying to get into someone's kitchen at midnight, face smushed, forehead fogging the glass, hands flat like he thought he could absorb information through osmosis. I blinked. "Is he watching us?" I asked. Marion sighed. "Yes, and no, we can't pretend we didn't see him." He made exaggerated tapping motions, mouthing something dramatic like, "Open the door," and "You can't do this," while security in the hallway pretended very hard not to see him. Marion pressed the intercom. "Could security please escort Mr. Hargrove away from the executive wing windows? He is smearing." We watched as 2 guards approached. Ethan tried to run, but because the hallway was narrow and he was wearing leather-soled dress shoes, he absolutely did not know how to walk in. He slipped on the polished floor, did a half split, and tried to save himself by grabbing onto the window frame. Except it wasn't a window frame. It was a ficus plant. He pulled it down with him in slow motion, hitting the ground in what had to be the least graceful fall ever recorded in corporate history. Soil exploded across the floor like a botanical crime scene. The guards helped him up while he yelled, "This isn't over!" And also, "That plant attacked me," for reasons unclear to anyone except himself. Marion pinched her nose. Good Lord, his father let that child sign payroll checks. We closed the blinds. The next morning at 8:04 a.m., he attempted a coup. Not a smart one, not a strategic one. No. He tried to retake his job by standing on a rolling office chair in the lobby, banging a stapler against a copy of Forbes magazine, and yelling, "Let my people go!" There were no people. No one was following him. HR escorted him to the sidewalk, where he continued making speeches, while a confused intern called building security. An hour later, he tried again. This time he stormed into the cafeteria with sunglasses on and a Bluetooth headset he definitely wasn't on a call with, yelling, "You can't fire me. I quit," even though he had, in fact, been fired. Then came attempt number 3. He tried to bribe the IT department to give him CEO access again. He approached Kevin, sweet, gentle, cardigan-wearing Kevin, and said, "Kevin, buddy, pal, I'll give you $1,000 if you restore my admin privileges." Kevin, who looked like he'd never done anything illegal in his life, blinked slowly and said, "Mr. Hargrove, sir, your password was literally son of CEO 123. You're not getting admin privileges again." Ethan gasped like he'd been stabbed. "Who told you that?" "You did," Kevin said, "last week, loudly, to everyone." It got worse. He tried to rally employees by sending a mass email from his personal Gmail account titled, "The Real CEO Speaks." It went straight to spam. Then he tried standing in front of the building with a handwritten sign that said, "Bring back Ethan or watch this company die." Someone from finance took a picture. Someone from HR added a meme caption. Within an hour, it was circulating around the office Slack with the tag, "Bring Back Ethan Challenge," where employees posted increasingly ridiculous photos of themselves, holding fake protest signs like, "Bring back Ethan. My breakfast burrito depends on it." And Ethan was right about the plants taking over. And make CEO nepotism great again. At one point, Ethan tried adjusting his sign to something more threatening. "I know secrets." Security politely asked him to go home. He refused. So security escorted him to the sidewalk again, where he began pacing like a stressed zoo lion, ranting into his phone about hostile corporate takeovers, even though the only takeover happening was the takeover of his dignity. I watched part of it from the boardroom security feed, the way one watches a nature documentary about an animal struggling to understand its environment. Marion watched too, shaking her head slowly. "I used to think he was dangerous," she said. "Now I think he's, I don't know, structurally unsound." "Possibly concussed," I added. "Possibly since childhood," she replied. That made me laugh, really laugh, and it felt good, because while Ethan was outside making a public fool of himself, attempting increasingly desperate stunts to regain his imaginary kingdom, I was inside preparing something much worse for him, something quiet, something cold, something final, because while he was yelling about being the rightful CEO, the forensic auditors were tearing through his financial trail like wolves through snow, and what they were finding made his tantrums look like the warm-up act. This wasn't just mismanagement. This wasn't just incompetence. This was theft, fraud, deception, asset stripping, illegal transfers, kickback schemes hidden under fake consulting agreements. He wasn't a spoiled heir making dumb decisions. He was a criminal making desperate ones. And every ridiculous stunt he pulled outside the building only made the contrast sharper. The employees laughed at his antics. The board got stronger in their resolve. The auditors got hungrier. And I got ready. Because once the audit ended, once the law stepped in, once the numbers told their story, there would be no sign, no protest, no tantrum big enough to save him. He thought humiliation was the worst thing that could happen. He didn't realize humiliation was the warning shot. The real punishment wasn't public. Not yet. It would come later, colder, sharper, and in front of the one audience he cared about most, his father. The next morning, the building felt different. Not louder, not busier, just sharper, like the entire place was waiting for a moment it didn't fully understand, but could feel in its bones. Word had spread. The founder was coming. Employees stood a little straighter. Managers double-checked their reports. Even the security guards looked freshly ironed. Everyone knew Charles only came to the office when something monumental was about to happen. And today, something monumental was going to end someone. I reached the executive floor early. Marion was already there, dressed in a tailored suit, with the expression of a woman about to witness the downfall of a dynasty. The forensic audit team waited in the boardroom with their binders. The air hummed with something too heavy to be called tension. It was inevitability. At exactly 9:00 a.m., the elevator dinged. Everyone straightened. Charles stepped out. He looked older than I remembered, but not weaker. His eyes, pale blue, sharp, surveyed the floor with the precision of a man who had built empires and buried threats. He nodded at me once, short but meaningful. "Good morning," he said. "Morning." "Sir, is everything prepared?" "Yes." "Is my son here?" As if summoned by the mention of his name, we heard it. A commotion, then yelling, then what could only be described as a clatter, the unmistakable sound of someone tripping over something expensive. Charles raised an eyebrow, and then Ethan appeared. Oh, Ethan. Today he came dressed in a suit 3 shades too bright, hair slicked back with something that made it glisten like he dipped his head in motor oil. He froze the moment he saw his father. "Dad, He blurted, "I didn't know you were coming." Charles didn't respond. He simply looked at his son, really looked at him, and something unreadable passed through his gaze. Disappointment, hurt, exhaustion, and something even colder. "Ethan," he said, "we're having a board meeting." "Great," Ethan said too quickly. "Great, yes. I'll just take my seat." "You don't have a seat," Charles said. Silence. You could hear a pin drop, or in this case, the sound of Ethan's self-confidence hitting the floor. "What?" he croaked. "We'll discuss it inside," Charles said, walking past him. We followed him into the boardroom. The room was full, every board member present, every auditor ready with their binders. HR, legal, the CFO, the COO seat at the head of the table, my seat, waiting for me. I took it. Ethan noticed. He stumbled. Why is she sitting there?" he demanded. "That's my—" Charles lifted a hand. One gesture, one silent command, and Ethan shut up like a dog that suddenly remembered who owned the leash. Charles took the founder's seat and looked around at the board. "Begin." Marion nodded to me, and I rose. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't dramatize it. I didn't gloat. I simply presented the truth. The shell companies, the embezzlement, the false consulting fees, the forced buyouts, the missing warehouse assets, the falsified audit reports, the transfers to personal accounts, the cryptocurrency funneling, the mountains of debt hidden behind forged signatures. With each page I turned, Ethan's complexion shifted. Red, pink, white, green, ash. He tried to interrupt once. "This is taken out of context." The auditors opened another binder. He tried again. "I didn't sign that." They showed the metadata. He tried again. "Those invoices are fake," the CFO said. "They came from your email." He tried a fourth time. "That's not my signature." The handwriting analyst, "Yes, there was one," said, "It absolutely is." He wilted. He didn't sag. He didn't slump. He wilted. Like a flower left in the sun too long. When my presentation ended, Charles cleared his throat, and the room went silent. "Ethan," he said, voice steady, "do you deny any of this?" Ethan opened his mouth, then closed it, then opened it again, then said the most pathetic, laughable, painfully on-brand thing possible. "It's her fault." A ripple of disbelief moved through the room. He stammered, pointing at me. "She tricked me. She sabotaged me. She must have hacked my email. That's illegal. I'm the victim here." Charles stared at him like he was watching a stranger. "Son," he said slowly, "this woman owns 72% of this company." Ethan blinked. "No, she doesn't." "She does." "No, she doesn't." "She does." "No, she—" "Ethan." He flinched. Charles leaned forward. "Do you know why she owns that much?" he asked. Ethan shook his head violently. "Because I gave it to her." The room held its breath. Ethan sputtered, his voice cracking. "You what?" "I gave it to her because I trusted her judgment more than yours." It was a knife, a clean one, straight through whatever delusion he had left. "You can't pick her over your own son," he shouted. Charles's tone sharpened. "I didn't pick her over my son. I picked her over your behavior." Silence. Ethan looked around desperately, as if searching for a single ally in a room full of people whose careers he'd trampled. He found none. "Motion," Marion said calmly, "to permanently remove Ethan Hargrove from any managerial authority, revoke his corporate privileges, and initiate legal proceedings based on the findings of the forensic audit." Seconded. Thirded. All in favor? 11 hands went up. Then Charles lifted his, unanimous. Ethan stumbled backward like he'd been physically hit. "You can't do this," he whispered. "It's done," Charles said. "You're ruining my life." "No," Charles said quietly. "You did that yourself." Security stepped behind Ethan. He didn't fight them this time. He didn't shout. He didn't argue. He just sagged. And just before they escorted him out, he looked at me. Not with hatred, not with anger, but with confusion, like he still couldn't understand how the world had changed without his permission. "You," he whispered, "you did this. Finally, truth." "Yes," I said, "I did." He swallowed. "Why?" I met his eyes, not cruel, not triumphant, just honest. "Because you fired me." He blinked. "That wasn't enough." "And because you tried to tank your father's company," I added. "Still not enough." "And because you stole from employees, shareholders, and your own family." Not enough. "And because you were willing to let the company burn just so you could stay warm." That one landed. Security escorted him out. The doors closed behind him. When the board adjourned, Charles stayed behind. He looked tired again, but not defeated. He walked over, placed a hand on my shoulder, and said, "Save my company." And for the first time in months, it felt possible. Because the threat was gone, the rot was exposed, the foundation was cracked but fixable, and the man who thought he could destroy me in one day had been undone in front of the very people he once ruled over, not by yelling, not by fighting, not by force, but by structure, by truth, by receipts. Corporate revenge isn't loud. It's written in numbers. It's executed in silence. And it ends with a signature. When I walked out of the boardroom, CEO, majority owner, and the first person in years to put the company back on the right path, I passed through the lobby. Ethan's protest sign was still there, abandoned behind a trash can. "Bring back Ethan or else." Someone had scribbled under it. Or else what? He'll attack another ficus? I smiled and kept walking, because sometimes the coldest revenge is simply watching a villain lose everything they were never qualified to have. If you want more stories about power players falling face first, subscribe, like, and share for more stories where revenge is served cold.